For our hardware integration, we've got a few pieces that I'm going to focus in on specifically. First, we have our tablet, and we have a custom fit tablet mount. So we tend to use the rugged tablets from Samsung in the Samsung Galaxy Tab Active line. So the one that's pictured is a Samsung Galaxy Tab Active 5. All of the tablets that we include are capable of having a cell data plan with them. And it's custom fit into a mount. Our supplier of mounts is RAM mounts. They have custom fit to the tablet. As you can see, our Active 5 tablet, which is shown in the Active 5 RAM mount, we modify a little bit, but it will have a plug in the right side that is like a right angle USB connector. That is connecting up to our USB cable that is a custom screw-in USB connector that goes into the monitor box. You can unplug that at any time, and that disconnects both power and data that is being connected to the monitor box. So it's required for both. So there's not a separate power to our box. You can also remove by lifting up on the top and popping the tablet out. The tablet has pogo pins on the bottom, kind of allows it to dock, and so power comes through the bottom of this, and so that's how it's able to be connected to power automatically with a nice snap in, and power will be restored. So the other piece to this, integrated into the mount, is the power connector is off on this side. So the connector over here should never be used for putting power in from a USB cigarette adapter or a hardwired power connector. The only power should come is through the connector in the bottom left hand of the base of the dock. And this will usually be either a USB mini B or a C connector, but it's a type of USB connector. This cable should always be included with your tablet, and you can see it's kind of turning on and off power as I go. I have the other end here connected into a USB cigarette power adapter, but really anything works. It doesn't have to be this specific one that we include with everybody's purchase, but it can be anything that you have around. One of the alternative tablets that we sell that might be included if you opt for it is the Samsung Galaxy Tab Active 4 Pro, which is the latest version of that rugged line of tablets, but it's the 10-inch version, so it's just the bigger cousin of the Active 5. And there's not a ton different with this, but with this one we don't have to modify the mount that comes, the RAM mount that we get that's custom fit to the tablet. So it has the same connection where you can just use the top, and it still has the pogo pins on the bottom to mount, and that's where it gets power from. But in this case, so same thing, power comes in on the left side just like the Active 5 tablet mount, but in this case there's a data connector that comes out here, and so this is the USB data connector this is what goes to the custom USB cable that we have that goes to the monitor box. So whereas with the Active 5 it was embedded within the tablet mount, we kind of custom embed it and use some zip ties in the back and kind of wire it in so it doesn't so it's in a good stable spot. But this one you can just have it just plugs in right here off of the right side, and then that connection goes right to the box. So that's about the only difference, is that they can come in separate pieces and it's not modified from the normal standard. One thing I also wanted to point out here too is that with our tablet mounts that we send, you'll see usually a connector that's included. So this little connector that you see is like a USB strain relief. So it goes around the two cables and then has 4 zip tie points. So they'll be like with tiny little zip ties. So you can put them both in there and then zip tie around each side here, and then also at the ends. It's a real real great way to make sure that those USB cables don't come out. You can do the same thing here. So usually with this Active 4 mount, you'll see there'll be a smaller strain relief thing, and then also a larger one that does the same thing but goes between these two. And definitely recommend that. It's a good thing to put in there. Very helpful to make sure that all the vibration in driving doesn't cause the USB connection to get a little bit loose. Now I'm going to look at our cables that we come with the system. So the first cable is our 12-pin cable. So this cable is what's used for connecting up to an electrical signal that is turning on a valve. So like a solenoid or a electric ball valve. So it's 12 pins. So there's 11 signal wires and 1 ground wire. So this means it can track up to 11 powered boom switches. So for example, I'm using just an example sprayer controller. And this one just happens to be easy that in the back, it's got a screw terminal for each of the signals that would go out to a solenoid. So I just have our wires in there, and then I also have the ground wire jumpered over to ground on the box. But as far as the specific coloring that we use, we have in the hardware guide, it'll list that coloring, but each wire has a different color, so you can map from switches 1 to 11 are these powered switches. And so those can be, really that just needs to be any signal that turns 12 volt on when something is spraying and is off and not connected to anything when it's not spraying. So we really use the same strategy for being able to track mosquito foggers, pretty much anything that has a signal as long as we see it. So the system is designed pretty generic. So this 12-pin connector, this goes right into the box. So the box has 3 connections. One is this 12-pin cable, and next we're going to look at the flow switch cable. So the next cable I'm going to talk about is our 8-pin flow switch cable. So with 8 pins, there's 4 pairs of wires, so it can track up to 4 flow switches. So this is a common brand. We have like a couple different flow switches that we use, but any flow switch works. But this particular brand, Jam Sensor, they have a couple nicely made switches that they all come with 3 wires. So there's like a red and then a black and an orange. So the red wire is the one that we do not use. So I typically just tape that one back so there's no loose connection around. The black and the orange wire our very first flow switch is green. So we have 4 pairs of wires. So they're not a switch like this. A flow switch is just a passive switch. So they're not polarized at all. So there's nothing wrong you can't hook them up backwards. And so the pair of green wires, I just take one green wire, hook it up to black, take the other green wire and hook it up to orange, and that's all you need. And usually take the other wires, clip them so there's no wires stripped or sitting out the ends, and then just tape them because these are passive. If you connect one to the other, it's gonna see it as a connection and it'll give you a false reading. So that's something you want to tie back. This particular flow switch, these Gem Sensor one, this one, and there's another one that's a little bit smaller in size, but they have the same fundamental mechanism with them. They just, when fluid flows through, there's a little float. The float raises to the top and it triggers a magnetic sensor that's in there, and then that's what activates the switch. So it is a waterproof thing. The top of it is, you can take it out and clean it by turning the top and then pulling it out. And one of the nice features of this too, it is adjustable. So there's a little set screw right here that you can stick a flat regular screwdriver in. And this one in particular is adjustable from 1 gallon per minute to 6 gallon per minute. And for the most part, most sprayers are spraying at a pretty on the lower end of that volume. So we tend to just adjust it and find the lowest rate. And one of the ways to do this that I usually do before I hook up the cable is I'll take a multimeter and put it in there's sort of the beep, the continuity mode, where you can turn it on, and if two wires are touching, then it'll beep. That's an easy way to hear it. And so I'll take the red probe, and put it on black, and the other black probe and put it on orange, or whatever. It doesn't really matter which direction you put them on. And I'll then take the hand wand, pump on, have the hand wand just spraying out, and then come over here, listen for the beep, and just take this and turn it around until you get to a point where you hear it. And if you do hear it, then you know it's a good setting, and it's going to trigger. And then once you do have a good setting point, then go back to the hand wand, listen for that beep, let the hand wand no spray, make sure it goes off, hold it on, make sure it stays on the whole time, and just keep fiddling with that adjustment until you get that right. So now we're going to talk about the connections, the cables, and where they go in the monitor box. So this is the SpraySync WT1 monitor box. So on the side there are 3 connections. On the bottom right is USB. On the top center is our 8-pin flow switch connector. And on the bottom left is the 12-pin connector for the solenoids and ball valves and electrical signals. So these simply go in. There's no twisting. You just push it in, and you'll hear a snap. So that the top of it, there's a little release. So you press down and pull out, and it stays in there pretty snug. But you just push it in until you hear it snap. The 8-pin is the same as the connector made by the same company, works the same way. So you take there's this little dust cap. So if you're not using one of the cables, I suggest keeping that on, but we'll remove it, and then same thing, just press in. There's no twisting needed. And then just push the tab down and pull off to get it out. And then the last connector is our USB connector. So this is a custom screw USB. So how it works, I'm just going to plug that in. How this works is there's a white triangle on the top that you can see right here. That should always be up. If you look inside, it's kind of hard to see though. There is a triangle inside that it's trying to line up to, but it does have a shape that it's not just reversible or anything. So you do have to get the shape match. So just look at the shape, and if the triangle is up, and then just push it in, not with a lot of force, but you just get it to a point, and then you have the collar that you can screw around. So just get it on and then screw it around. And it is plastic on plastic, so you don't have to really ratchet it down. In fact, don't try and over tighten it. That'll cause some problems. Might thread it or something. So, but that's the connections to the SpraySync monitor box. That's all you need. Again, the USB is power and data, and that power and data, so it's actually powered by the tablet itself. So remember, the tablet is powered by the cable on the left hand side, and it's actually the tablet that's powering the box. So there's no separate power to the box, like a separate cord or anything that you need to run power and ground to. Power, ground, and data all go through the USB connection. So as far as mounting options on the SpraySync monitor box, there are these flanges on either side, and there's 4 holes there, so that makes it real easy if you want to bolt it down or screw it down to something. Definitely recommend, because if you're in a vehicle and get in an accident or just hit some big bumps, it's like you could go flying around if it's not fastened down. So definitely recommend that you do that. And so that's one way to do it, is fastening it down to something with screws or bolts. Also, if you end up having a pole or something in the vehicle where if you have a sprayer controller that's mounted to, oftentimes just mount it like this and then use zip ties and kind of thread them through and then around a pole. Even if you have to do a couple zip ties together, that can be another great option to mount it. And then, in cases where, maybe it's not, you don't have a great spot to mount something down to, or just want it to be removable. If you're reusing the same box and going on multiple things, one of the things that you can do that we've done in a lot of cases is you could just put some Velcro on the back, put some Velcro on the back there, and then put it down on the surface that you want it to stick to. So, some pretty common places for us to mount it, we would, if there's room in a glove compartment, or just a glove box, or that's a great spot for it. You might have to, maybe notch out a hole for some of the cables, but a lot of times you can kind of squeeze them by, or just like on a floorboard, like underneath a seat or behind the seat. Great safe places to tuck it. The cables that we send are pretty long, 12 foot for one of them, and 20 foot for the full switch cable. So they'll run. We got lots of room there. So, but ultimately it's really just about finding a safe spot for it, and making sure that it's tied down, so that you don't have it bouncing around and pulling other cables and causing other issues with it. But it is a pretty rugged aluminum enclosure, so it can take a beating if it needs to. But the flanges on there are real sturdy, and we've mounted it to a lot of different places. So got lots of flexible options to mount this thing. So now we're going to talk about the connection up at the tablet. So right now in the monitor box, I have our 12-pin connector connected, and I have our USB connector connected. But you'll notice that the cable is sticking out of the right side of the tablet. So that's our actual connection. So just with this is just kind of running through the back, and you'll see it's zip tied. So in order to get the box to be recognized and for power and data for it to power on, we have to plug it in the side. The first time that you plug it in, there's going to be a message that pops up, and so I'm going to switch over to a view where you can see that. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to check this. There's the always open SpraySync when the rest of that says. So you just check that box and hit OK, and it usually will prompt it twice. But then from now on, you shouldn't have to do that. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and pull the USB out, so you can kind of see what happens after the first time. So I'm going to pull it out, and you'll notice it says USB disconnected at the bottom that flashes. And also at the top right, you see there's a USB icon with a slash that goes through it. So I'm going to plug it back in now. You'll see it says USB ready, and then at the top that USB icon goes to good. So that's one of the first things to check, just to make sure everything is basically working there. So now I'm going to show how to verify if your 12-pin cable and all of your switches are hooked up correctly. So keep in mind I have the 12-pin cable plugged in. I do have the sprayer controller on, and so on my side I'm gonna be able to toggle some boom switches, and then I'll show you how they work. So the easiest way to do this is in the top left, the hamburger menu with the three lines. Hit that, and you go to Vehicle Switch Config option. So this option will list each switch. So here you see switch 1, then there's switch 2, 3, 4, and then each of them has a configuration here. Out to the right, they're configured as a boom. There's a few different options that you can configure them as. But for the purposes of this, I cover a lot of this stuff in other videos. So for the purposes of this, I'm just going to go through merely verifying the hardware. And so the one piece I want you to look at is actually this little toggle box out here. So this isn't something I can click. This is a direct view of the hardware state. So when it's left to left, it's off. And when it's on, it'll slide over to the right. So what I'm going to do is I've got our sprayer on, but I have all the boom switches off. So I have the master switch on. I'm going to go ahead and turn switch 1 on. So you can see, you can probably hear me click it off. And I'll do switch 1 on. I'll do switch 1 off. So this is how to verify that your hardware is working. So it's a lot harder if you go to the map and try and turn stuff on and off, because then you have to be moving and you have to have a switch config all set up here with this 4 to 6 feet. If you don't have that, it's not going to show up on the map. So this is the way that we verify step by step that things are working. So this, after we have everything plugged in and USB is all connected, this is the way we do it. So I'm going to toggle 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And then I can turn off the master. Right now I'll turn off the master and all 4 will go off. If I turn the master back on, all 4 will go back on. Because again, we're just looking at the signal that goes out to the valves. So that's how the easiest way to verify it. And so with this 1 through 11, remember we have a 12-pin connector that's for the solenoid valves. 1 through 11 is for those. The pin 12 is where the flow switch starts. So 12, 13, 14, and 15 are the 4 flow switch cables, switches from the 8-pin cable. So now I'm driving, and I just want to show you what this looks like when you're spraying. So this is one of the next piece to just verify. Once you have the vehicle switch config page and you see the individual switches toggle, when you toggle them on, you can be pretty confident that everything is working. But coming to this screen, make sure that the rest of everything is working. So within the vehicle switch config, you need to have the switches that you have configured with a particular boom width. So this is starting at 4 foot all the way to 6 foot. And so this, you can see here, switches 1 through 8 are configured. So that's great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, and now I'm going to start toggling stuff. You see some extra spraying there. So I'm going to turn the master on, and then I hit my right switch, my first switch. And so that's just the very first very small spray section. So I'm going to wait until I clear through this section that looks like we're already sprayed. So I'm going to get to this other spot here, and so now I'm going to turn on 2 of the switches at once. And so notice that when you spray, you see on the bottom, the play button turns to sort of pause and then spraying. So if I turn it off, it'll just go to a play button. So you don't really hit that play button. That play button is really just for use if you don't have a sprayer connected to you. So if I turn the master back on now it shows that it's spraying. And I can turn individual sections on, and they'll show up as I turn them on. Okay, now I'll turn the master off. So that's kind of the last step. And so usually it's good to go take it around, go drive, try spraying out some water and make sure everything looks like it's mapping on the ground, because the other key piece of it is to make sure that is mapping on the ground in the right spot where your sprayer is. And so that is going to be in relation to where you map that is in relation to where the tablet is. So remember, the tablet here is what has the GPS. It's not our WT1 monitor box. That does not have the GPS in it. The GPS is from the tablet. So everything that you design is going to be in relation to where, if the GPS is right in the center of your cab, then, if you're spraying out to the right of your vehicle, you're going to be, 3-4 feet where you actually start spraying. So everything would have an offset like that. So I won't go through too much of that stuff because I've got that in a lot of other videos, but feel free to take a look at those out on the website. So I figured I'd walk through quick just some tips on troubleshooting if something seems to be going wrong, with the connection, the switches aren't tracking or anything. We've already gone through those. You got the vehicle switch config page. That's a great page to go. Make sure things are working. But maybe occasionally with shutting down the vehicle and like tablet in and out, and having it charging or power disconnecting, or maybe a cable getting loose or not. You could always have something that goes wrong. So one of the things that I like to always do is if you disconnect that cable, let it sit until you see that USB disconnected message, and then plug it back in. That's a great way to just sort of start from scratch. If you do that and you don't see that USB ready show up, even after waiting just a few seconds, it could be a sign of a bigger problem. Could be something wrong with the box. Maybe the USB connection isn't plugged in. But that's really all that is testing. Even if you unplug everything else from the box except the USB to the monitor box, that's really all that's testing. It was just it powering on. So that's kind of one way just to make sure, is something wrong with the USB cable, USB connector. Make sure, that's in there. So And then one other thing that can be good, you know, if you're having problems with it, maybe charging or something, right? So there's a few pieces here. There's the USB cigarette adapter that, you know, in a lot of vehicles that can come loose really easy. You know, it does have a, you know, it is plugged in the top of there, so making sure that that is plugged in. And then there is also this connection here that you can unplug and power will go off. So that's one other thing to look at there. And if you also are having trouble with it powering, you know, unplug the USB, and then also realize that, you know, you can unsnap this, and this is going to disconnect power also. So, you know, one of the things that can happen is that these can get dirty at the bottom, and those are the power pins. So it's actually, and then there's corresponding pins in the bottom of the tablet mount. So sometimes taking like a Q-tip with some isopropyl alcohol and just wiping it across there and wiping it across here can help. Because especially if you're taking your tablet out, in and out, and it's in a dirty place, you know, it's in the cab and your sprayer, it's never a real clean environment. So that can be a thing to double check there if you're having a problem with it powering. But once you snap it in, you know, if everything's looking good, you should see that flash where it looks like it's charging. And then, you know, always going back and plugging that in. You know, and then I guess another troubleshooting thing, you know, if you're still doing that and, you know, done all that stuff and, you know, the tablet is still, you know, not tracking or anything, one of the things that you can do, that would want to be the next things I would do, would be you can just close the SpraySync app. So I'm going to switch over to the app view so I can do that. Okay, so what I can do here is there's this button on the side of the tablet. Maybe I'll switch back here really quick. This button right here, there's a middle button that's the home button. The top one is the back. This one kind of brings up the apps. So now I'll switch over, and what you'll see is you'll kind of see the apps listed. You can just take that app, press on it, and swipe up, and then it's closed. So that's a great way to, and then you can press the home button to kind of get back, and then you can find where the Chrome app or where the SpraySync app is, and just log it back in. You know, pick your group, and go back in through everything. And then you know, and then kind of like most computer things, you know, very last resort. If that did it and kind of didn't work, don't feel afraid to, you know, just give it a restart. So if you want to give it a restart, I'll switch back to a view of the tablet so I can show how to do that with the buttons on the top. To power it off, if you want to power it off, so there are a few different, maybe I'll tilt this down so you can see a little bit better. There's going to be several buttons on the top. So we've got this colored button that's on the active 5 is colored green. That's not the one to press. That's called the active key. The other two buttons over here are volume up and down, but the one in the middle is the one to press. So I'll tilt this back up so you can kind of see the screen a little bit. But if I hold that in for just a second or two, it's going to give you a prompt. I'll flip over to the view so you can see that a little easier. So it's going to have the power off, and so all you have to do, you can power it off or restart. So if you press that restart button, it's going to go ahead and give it a restart. And so, you know, sometimes you have to do that just as like a first case before, you know, maybe if you kind of reach all the end of your troubleshooting, you know, that should be one of the steps that you at least try and see if things work better on the way back up.